Good afternoon. How's everyone doing on this fine Monday? Jose Hernandez, Ideate Labs. Once again, we have the opportunity to talk about a Lifeline program, increasing access, broadband connectivity, telecommunications. We are joined by the Assembly member from the great 30th Assembly District. We'll start off in a second with and then go into an amazing panel once again with the hopes of increasing education on this Lifeline program, what it means for the constituents, talk about ideas on how to expand it, and then take some questions during the process and afterwards. But first, let me begin by thanking the Assembly member for allowing us to reach out to his constituents. And thank you again for your championship here in Sacramento. I know that you've only done this for a little bit, but already your presence is being felt throughout the Assembly and the Senate side, and we look forward to working with you on this and a lot of different issues. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Assembly Member Rivas.
Thank you, Jose. I really appreciate the kind words. I really appreciate the opportunity to host this town hall in our district for our constituents and to really talk about a really important issue and a very important topic. Clearly these past few months have been incredibly challenging for us all. As a state, we face no shortage of challenges and crises prior to COVID-19. And in the months since the onset of our public health emergency, these challenges, these crises, they've only been exacerbated by our pandemic. Issues like our housing and homelessness crisis, our utility crisis, the impacts of our worsening wildfires. And clearly the pandemic has also exposed many vulnerabilities, many gaps in our social safety net system, in the provision of services that we render to our residents. And these gaps, they clearly threaten to further widen economic inequality in our state, and our most vulnerable residents and the families we represent. They're absolutely paying the highest price because of it, and are being left further and further behind. And one such issue is this issue of how we render, how we offer internet and broadband service, high-speed internet. The digital divide, not only here in California but in our country. Because here in California, despite being the 5th largest economy in the world, despite being home to this high-tech industry, many of our residents here in California, they continue to be unserved or underserved when it comes to deployment to access to affordable high-speed broadband service. And it's 2020. And access to broadband has become as essential to individual and our local regional economic prosperity as electricity and basic public infrastructure like the roads we drive on. And there's no question that from rural to urban areas in our state here in California and everywhere in between, all people, every single person in the state stands to have a benefit from having access to broadband high-speed internet. High-speed internet breaks down the barriers of distance and time, allowing residents in the rural parts of our state and our most remote areas, the families that live in poverty in our disadvantaged communities, it allows them to participate in economic and civic life far beyond their geographic region. And the issue has only grown in importance as more of our day-to-day activities have shifted to these online platforms to meet the realities of COVID-19. The internet has become the de facto workplace or a classroom or a doctor's office for most of us or for all of us, and more residents are using telehealth services to check in with their doctor for routine visits. Students and teachers are using the internet and going online to have classes through video chat platforms. We have more and more work is almost exclusively being done remotely over the internet and over our phones. With the current reality of our pandemic, the internet is how we stay connected and how we remain productive. And all of this means that we must do more to find ways to ensure that people have the resources, people have the technology, they have the tools, and the programs needed to get online. And I'm proud to work with many of our local officials, our local organizations, to address this issue and to do something about the significant racial and rural divides in high-speed internet access. And I know here in our district, the 30th Assembly District, we are well represented. You know, I just look at the work of former Assembly member and current Monterey County Supervisor Luis Alejo, along with Supervisor Chris Lopez, who have proactively created a stakeholder group in the County of Monterey to bring together educational leaders and who are working to close this high-speed internet access gap. We have Ray Cancino from Community Bridges in the County of Santa Cruz, who has also been working to find ways to assist residents that his organization serves and that his organization works with, you know, every single day. And these are just a couple of examples of the leadership that is necessary to address this issue. And clearly, it's going to take a coordinated, strategic effort involving all levels of government to ensure that we are providing the resources and support to solve and improve this situation. And I want to thank Ideate Labs and True Connect for helping put this town hall together, Jose. I really appreciate our panel of speakers who are with us. Again, Monterey County Supervisor Luis Alejo, former member of the State Assembly, Ray Cancino from Community Bridges, Paulina Gonzalez Brito from the California Reinvest Coalition, as well as Nathan Johnson from True Connect. As I've mentioned, these past few months have been very challenging for us all. And, you know, I know, you know, that Supervisor Alejo, other elected officials, you know, our office, that we have been working to help and support our constituents, our region, to provide, you know, our residents with the assistance and information about available resources. And I think what I'm excited about in this town hall is the discussion on one such resource that is available to local residents, which is the California Lifeline program. This is an $800 million a year resource right here in our state that ensures people are able to stay connected in their community by having access to a free smartphone that has the data capability to ensure connectivity and the ability to access other resources available in our state and in our world. And so there are many ways to qualify for Lifeline, which we'll learn about, but not everyone may be aware that they do qualify. And so less than, I believe, according to the data we have, Jose, less than 30% of eligible families in our district, in Assembly District 30, are enrolled. And so I hope that if people get something out of this town hall, there's certainly one way that we can increase awareness of this valuable program, and more people will enroll. And so with that, Jose, again, really appreciate the opportunity to host this in our district, and look forward to listening to our incredible panel.
Thank you again, Assemblymember, for your leadership. And that data is correct. In fact, on the 29th, we're going to be releasing the new maps that's showing eligibility. And for Assembly District 30, we're showing that 67,900 individuals are eligible and enrolled. So definitely a timely conversation we're having today in terms of access. But let me now transition to our very distinguished panel. And as the Assemblymember mentioned, a key to success is coordination. And that's why we have state, local partners, state, local leaders, and private also at the table to making sure that we're successful. And let's begin our panel today with someone that I've known many years and continues to be an impressive force, whether it's at state level, whether it's at the local level, former chair of Latino Caucus, former vice chair of Boys and Men of Color, really a champion of not only underserved, but all his constituents. So that's why it's not a surprise that he's always taking leadership in terms of trying to address this broadband issue at the local level and working on partnerships. So it's my pleasure to begin the panel with County Supervisor Luis Alejo. And maybe if you can begin by talking about a couple things. How do we raise education, and what can we be doing better in terms of enrolling more people?
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Thank you to my good friend, Assemblymember Rivas, and to all my panelist colleagues here. I'm really glad to participate because this is one of the few panels that actually made it a priority to have community-based organizations and local government talking with our state leaders about how to address this problem, to further the solutions to providing greater access to our residents, especially our more low-income residents in California who are suffering the most during this pandemic. And so it's setting the right tone about how we should deal with this issue going forward. Local, state, community, and federal leaders working together to make better progress and make it much more quicker too for our communities. But I think Assemblymember Rivas brought up the right conversation to begin with. This conversation is on the minds of so many parents, and not just parents, but seniors and workers and all working families. This issue has become more prominent during this pandemic because it's forced people to look at doing more from home and relying more on broadband and internet. And frankly, I'm always honest when we have this conversation that this digital divide in California has gone on for far too long. And it is a national embarrassment, especially when California is the technology capital of the world. And so we have to push each other that we must do better. And in my district in Salinas, there was a recent heartbreaking photo of two little girls outside a fast food restaurant, which captured, I think, the image of what so many of our students are going through across the state and across our nation. And we already know that the numbers going on in July showed that 20% of our students didn't have internet access. And I commend our state superintendent, Tony Thurman, who's tried to do a lot of work in a very short amount of time, but it's frankly not enough. And we do know that it is communities of color, rural areas, low-income neighborhoods that are hurting the most. When we compare 33% of rural households who have internet compared to 78% in the urban areas, and even in the urban areas, in places like Los Angeles and Oakland, we know that the poorest residents, communities of color, still have major gaps in trying to have access. So when we're having this conversation about the California Lifeline for broadband, I mean, it's an exciting part of the strategy, a part of the solution, and we should all be supporting these efforts early on. Certainly, in terms of the pandemic, we already know Black and Latino residents are the most impacted by the hospitalization rates, infection rates, and death rates. And now, during this pandemic, we know the digital divide has also hit them the hardest. And so they are the ones paying the heavy price. So it's incumbent that every local government partner with our community organizations, see how could we be part of the solution. And when we talk about the California Lifeline program, I really think that local governments should be leading the way by already demanding that all providers, because these programs are voluntary, it's up to these service providers to decide participate in California Lifeline or not. That basically means, is it going to be even available to the areas that they serve in each county across California? And already local governments and cities and counties should be putting out a call to every service provider demanding and urging that they all participate in providing the California Lifeline program to the residents in our counties. Monterey County wants to be the first. We already have a letter in support of the California Lifeline program before the PUC, but we want to be the first county and hopefully all of our 12 cities to demand that all the service providers participate in California Lifeline. We also know that local governments, we already have resources and partnerships with community-based organizations and nonprofits that can help us get the word out faster to the many tens of thousands of residents in area that are eligible but have not yet enrolled in the program. And so we want to be part of that answer in terms of doing the community education and the outreach and trying to subscribe as many of our local residents to this great program as possible. But this program is not enough. I think the question is, what else should happen? What else should the state extend? And certainly this California Lifeline program should be extended to all the cable companies. There's no reason why cable companies should not have a similar program available, because in many urban areas and places like Monterey Bay, the infrastructure is there, but we just need an affordable, sustainable program for our lower income families so they could continue, not just get a month or two of very low cost service, but throughout the year, that they should have service in their homes that they can continue to pay for and afford based on their incomes. But beyond that, the question is, what else could local governments be doing? And locally, just 3 Fridays ago, we had our first meeting because we know that addressing this issue is not going to happen by one city doing it alone, the county, or every school district. We called all our our city superintendents. We have 5 school districts in Salinas. We brought the city of Salinas together, the county of Monterey, and we said, from here forward, I know we have a lot of work to do throughout the state, but we said, let's take care of our backyard. Let's work to make sure that we're working together, sharing costs, partnering, in terms of addressing the digital divide and making it available for every household in Salinas. That has to be incentivized more. That has to be encouraged by the state government to make funding available or encourage JPAs or shared costs among local governments, because we know that we're able to get projects through much more quicker and faster if we're working in partnership at the local level. But I also say that's not enough. I know at the state level, there's a lot of conversation about reforming our 6 state programs under the Public Utilities Commission, including the Advanced Services Program. We need to extend the life of those programs. We need to generate more funding so that we could address the needs of every Californian in our state. But I didn't want to leave today without also putting a bigger question. If we really want to address the digital divide once and for all in California, we do need much more funding if we're serious about it. We need a universal broadband and fiber bond. I hope the legislature works on this next year to put a bond on 2022. But that way we could upfront the billions of dollars that is needed to really address this problem once and for all in California. Because program by program, they're important. They do expand service to a lot of residents, but it's frankly not enough to address the bigger problem of the infrastructure that is needed, especially in the rural areas. And because there is small rural communities like San Nardo and San Lucas and South Monterey County that really struggle, that the internet service is not robust enough to especially when you have 2 or 3 kids on a Chromebook trying to access service in their home. Sometimes it's just not robust enough to have a quality and strong enough service for those students to have meaningful internet service within their home. So I want to be part of the solution, and I'm encouraging other local governments to let's start having that conversation to really work with state and federal government to really advance and make much more progress, much more quicker in the state of California. There's no reason why we can't do it, but this must be the moral imperative, not only in Sacramento, but in every local community. It's also a civil rights issue, and we have to frame it that way. And hopefully that will urge all of us at every level of government to act much more quickly to serve those that we care and love. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Supervisor. Yeah, and talking about kind of the unique partnerships, I think it's a great transition to Paulina from CRC. If you want to tell us a little bit about CRC and then what you're doing to ensure that all families have access to essential services like broadband, like telecommunications.
Thank you, Jose. And thank you, Assemblymember Rivas, for your leadership, and Supervisor Alejo. The California Reinvestment Coalition works to build an inclusive and fair economy and advocates for equitable investment to close the racial wealth gap. We are a coalition of 300 organizational members across the state. We work in Black, Brown, and other communities of color, and our members are affordable housing developers, financial and housing counselors, CDFI, CDCs, and tenant organizations. In the time of COVID and with the climate crisis upon us, broadband is the linchpin to education for our young people. It is critical for small businesses to quickly move online and for workers to be able to conduct their work safely from home. I want to start by telling a story of how this issue impacts Californians. As Supervisor Alejo reminded us, this is why we are here today, and it is these real-life stories that, of Californians who should be at the front line of this fight. I reached out to our members about this issue, and we've been receiving a lot of stories about how broadband is really impacting the economic lives of Californians across the state, of low-income Californians, of people of color across the state in particular. And as Supervisor Alejo mentioned, this is a civil rights issue. I spoke to Sharon Miller of the CEO of Renaissance Center, and it's this story that really stands out to me more than any other. Renaissance is a member of CRC. They do technical assistance for small businesses. They also work with people looking for job placements, for jobs in the Bay Area. And they work, she shared with me the following story in relation to the lack of access for broadband and how it impacts their clients. So the Adult Probation Department offers job placement program will, and most of the people recently released from jail do not have Wi-Fi capacity to participate in Zoom interviews, because that's how we're doing interviews nowadays for potential employers. So they often miss out on these opportunities. Furthermore, many transitional aged youth also miss out on similar opportunities without access to smartphones, many of whom are living with elderly parents who are not tech savvy. One email from their client simply read, and I quote, "I haven't been able to have access to class due to lack," and these are job classes, due to lack of not internet and no place that is open to get it either. We are working hard to get it back on, but as you know, things are hard right now, but I still would like to participate. What this means is that broadband is a lifeline. It is an equity issue, it's a civil rights issue, as we were reminded today. It is a racial justice issue. And during COVID-19, when Latino adults are finding ourselves at 16% of unemployment, when Black people in our community are also finding themselves at 14 or 16% of unemployment rates, and we're being furloughed at higher rates than other people in California, this is a civil rights issue. When we lose our jobs, we lose access to utilities, phone, and internet. And it's in the time of COVID, this means our kids are not able to access their education, that entrepreneurs are not able to move their businesses online, and that our communities cannot move from home, cannot work from home online easily. It means programs like Lifeline are actually lifelines so that our communities can actually survive economically and our people don't fall further behind. So this is a critical issue. CRC is committed to it, and we hope that we can continue to advance these stories as we move this issue forward so that we can put our people at the front of this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulina. And you're 100% correct in terms of the need. And looking at the local area, we'll turn to Raymond. And if you can take us a little bit about kind of what's happening at the local level. And just to reiterate the numbers that, I mean, statewide, we're looking close to more than 3 million people that are eligible, not enrolled. And again, 67,000 in this district alone. But Raymond?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, for us, we're seeing every little bit of this in every part of every district. You know, in our community, we are also inundated with the fact of the digital divide, how it's impacting families and individuals at this point in time. COVID has just exacerbated the need and the dependency that we are moving into in terms of digital need and broadband need in our communities. Specifically in need is just examples of telehealth and the need for access. So it's turned into something that we would call as a luxury into something that is now a dependency. And as we do that, we have to recognize the need and the power and the will to make sure that this infrastructure is available to everybody. This reminds me a lot of the electrification infrastructure investment that we did at the federal level in order to get rural communities connected to the electrical panel or the electrical grid, and the need to be able to provide free and or at least access to that is equal to any other individual in our communities. And so we need to do that locally now more than ever. I think that some things that we're looking at in terms of how this wonderful program, Lifeline, who, you know, unfortunately is only serving 30% of eligible families, can do or should be doing, is the need for expanded data in terms of the Lifeline program. Right now, data is capped at 3 gigabytes per household. The reality that latest statistics that I looked at was 300 gigabytes is an average household amount of gigabyte data usage. That's almost 100 times difference between what is equal and fair to a comparable household. I think what's needed is an expansion of the ability to do that. We also know that the Lifeline program and a lot of our infrastructure program is dependent on a lot of 3G services and not necessarily 5G services. As technology advances, we also need to make sure that programs like Lifeline are doing the advancements to make sure that we have equal and fair access that is just as good as anybody else. And so, for us, it's great that, individuals are getting some access through the service, but the reality is it's fallen behind, and we need to make sure that we're putting infrastructure in that's going to be helping our communities moving forward. Things that we're doing locally are outside of just providing a Lifeline program, are things like expanded projects or hub projects that we're expanding, where we're looking at already infrastructured locations that are high density, low income locations, and talking to people that are already purchasing internet, and then partnering with neighbors and asking them, can we put up this broadband or this kind of broadcasting system to allow free access to your neighbors? And so right now we haven't had a great success yet at making sure that happens, but that's the vision, is that we're going to be able to find these hubs in these communities. We're going to be able to basically split a person's individual broadband network into providing one network for the household, and then 50% of free broadband bandwidth to anybody that lives within about 200 feet of this individual's house. And so our goal is to then be able to provide the same level of speed and internet to individuals living within these community hubs, as a way to kind of jumpstart and try to get more people connected as we wait for what I think is exactly what Supervisor Alejo said is the solve, which is a major ballot initiative that will allow us to actually put in the infrastructure to allow these services to continue and to provide equal and fair access of broadband and telecommunications across the state. I think it's incredibly important, the needs that we're seeing at so many levels. It's not just seniors with the healthcare. We're using definitely individuals that are having to work from home or needing to work from home but can't because they might not have access wherever they live in the rural parts of community. To children also falling behind because they don't have enough bandwidth to be able to do the full Zoom, and so they have to only depend on it for emailing their class assignments or only being able to listen to it and not get the full experience. I mean, what is happening now is that people are being left behind in so many different ways, and the technology gap and the digital divide is so broad. And we're not even touching the hardware side. We're not even touching the fact that Lifeline does allow and provide a really good hardware of a telephone, but there's still many individuals that don't have access to other parts of connection in terms of the digital divide, which is the computers, the tablets, things that are being provided by school districts. But the solve is just not hotspots. I mean, that's the reality, is that's not going to solve the broadband issue for everybody. One, it's a one per person exchange. The pricing is a little high even at a bulk rate. We know that those are lower downloads and upload rates. We know that it's just really costly program to look at this in the prolonged sense. And so, for us, it's really important to figure out how can we work locally to make sure that these types of ballot measures get on the ballot. What do we do locally, and what are we invested to do now in order to at least to address as many gaps as we can with local dollars? And that's a low cost solution like what we're doing, which is basically what I'm calling democratizing our current broadband infrastructure and broadcasting it and paying for broadcasting of our existing infrastructure to allow for free and fair access for individuals. And we're only limited by the sense of density, and so and how far these broadcasting signals can go. But our goal is that we need to do something now, and we can't wait for the ultimate solve, which will be huge investment in infrastructure.
Thank you, Raymond. Eloquently put. The Lifeline program is a public-private partnership. And so we have with us TrueConnect. I think now they are the largest Lifeline provider in California. And I know they were the first provider in California, really working shoulder to shoulder with Kathy Sandoval, the commissioner that created the wireless program. But Nathan, I mean, we went straight into some of the kind of larger issues. I was wondering, as part of your introduction, if you can also talk about kind of the Lifeline program in terms of eligibility, that people are actually getting free services. And actually, that's something that is an issue because it's free. A lot of people don't think it's real. And so we'll talk about that in a little bit. But maybe you'll start off by going a little deeper in terms of the Lifeline program qualifications, what you get, and then we can get into the main question in terms of what are the barriers? Why are we only at 30%?
Thank you, Jose, and some really terrific and great commentary made by everyone on this call, and Supervisor Alejo, thank you, and Assemblymember Rivas as well. Appreciate you all joining this call. I believe these town halls have been a great help. There really is a need to get both the word out about the program, just raising awareness about Lifeline, availability of it, who qualifies and how you qualify. The current program, as Jose correctly outlined, we were the first approved wireless carrier in California. In part, just given our history, we've been in California now for 15 plus years, originally providing wireline, Lifeline, and then moving over to wireless a number of years ago. Our focus has been around how to expand the program and provide greater service. The one element about Commissioner Sandoval, the original architect of the program a number of years ago, designed the program so that there was really a lot more funding at the state level to support a much broader program. But she really truly understood the need to address the digital divide. And Ray, you defined that perfectly, and some of the elements exist with infrastructure and other things. So I think with that element, there is the base of a good program that's been put into place. Our frustration the past 6 years, the wireless program in place, as much as there is good funding that allows effectively for 4G LTE products to be provided on a smartphone basis, California is the only state that does that across the board. Any customer who qualifies for Lifeline automatically will receive a 4G LTE phone. We actually build and make our own phones out of China and have those FBO to Long Beach, where we put in and build in our own app technology infrastructure as well. The element around the digital divide relies on that issue entirely. You have to have the access to the e-healthcare, the e-education, those elements that can start with a smartphone. And then, as Ray, you had pointed out, there really then needs to expand in the device side. You need to have the connectivity to the appropriate devices, the tablets, the laptops, and then frankly, the connectivity is the essential part of all of that. We have been working tirelessly on trying to expand that. Part of our efforts within the Lifeline program itself is really investing back into technology so we can offer a number of very unique apps, including an app that we call Wi-Fi, which is an app that enables connection via Wi-Fi and does basically smart connections. So anyone who can't get network access, and this exists in a lot of areas, especially rural, where you don't have great network coverage, you can immediately expand into a Wi-Fi network, get access to Wi-Fi, and have such a better data experience. Those are things in the interim that are quick solves. What we really need is a commitment behind, essentially as Supervisor Alejo and Assemblymember Rivas outlined, we need a commitment by the Assembly and the Governor's Office to go at the CPUC to really tell them that we need to significantly expand the program and add a lot more support around it so that truly essentially an unlimited data program can be provided. And there was the comment made about the number of gigabytes per month on average usage. Yes, currently Lifeline offers 3 gigs per month. That's via the FCC as well at the federal level. The CPC currently is looking to expand that right now. The problem being is they're not looking to expand it to invest in the infrastructure and invest in broadening the program. Instead, they're just saying, hey, carriers, you pay for more of it, and we'll pay and basically reimburse less back to us and just give more data. That's great as an interim solution. For long term, there really needs to be a much more significant investment in truly providing unlimited data solution to everyone who needs a service and can get it. As Jose outlined in the beginning, the critical elements exist right now is that not only are there 3 million that are underserved and unserved through the Lifeline program, but you add in the fact that all the recent unemployed people from the COVID crisis, and that has more than doubled. So we're now sitting on a huge swath of people in California that need the service, either one, not aware of it, especially those who are unemployed, because perhaps they've never participated in the Lifeline program before, and nor have they heard of it. So you've got a much larger pool of people who are readily need the service and just need to have the awareness and the access to it. And frankly, the number one solution we need is a lot more data behind those efforts as well.
No, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. We are going to transition over quickly to a Q&A. If people on the line, if you can start submitting questions on the Q&A aspect, and we'll take them as we go. We'll have a couple already. And then we'll start off with some, I think, basic questions in terms of, I mean, one basic question is, how do you apply to Lifeline? Maybe Mr. Johnson can answer that one.
I can answer that easily. Yeah, the application process within California is actually very straightforward. We have a fully web-enabled online solution. You go right online, enroll all your information. All you really need is name, address, social security number, some form of identification within a program. You automatically qualify for Lifeline if you participate in a federal program, be it Medicaid, food stamps, what have you, as well as or a state program like CalFresh and other programs out there. Those are all listed on our website. It's under trueconnect.com, truconnect.com. And then you just apply through the application process. We submit that to what's called a third-party administrator in California. They process and review the application to make sure the person actually is within that program and is currently participating, and they're basically automatically qualified. Then we'll either drop ship a phone to the address that they want it sent to, or they can come to one of our retail locations, and we're basically all over California. So we're trying to, and we also have, just unlike other carriers, we actually have mobile units as well. So we'll actually drive out to more rural locations. We did this during the fires last year, where we went way up to Northern California to cover those areas with people who are out in Walmart parking lots, basically pitched in tents, and got them signed up and got their service to them right away. So things like that are absolutely necessary in this time and age. And our effort is to try to make the application process as easy as possible.
And Ray, maybe you can weigh in as well. I know that you've been doing some of this in turn, but you've seen some barriers as well.
Well, yeah, I think that one thing is that, we're, service providers, this is one of those things where it's a great opportunity to see the other side, is that, we have to assess people every day. We run WIC, Women, Infant, and Children, which is one of the qualifying federal programs in our county. And we're assessing them through, our own assessment process. But it would be a great idea if, we had the staff resources or the ability for the counties to have enough resources to be able to reassess for the Lifeline program itself, to have the ability to add this one additional review on top of the already extensive statewide review to run people through that process. So for us, it's a staff capacity issue. We have the same issue with LHEAP program, which is another low-income health emergency access program for individuals that don't have access, is that, we have third parties administrating and getting funding to administer the program themselves, but sometimes their capacity to enroll everybody is left out to service providers. But the service providers, it's kind of a chicken and egg thing, don't have enough staff resources to really enroll people. I mean, we're committed to it, and we've streamlined it to ask the question and provide the assistance to the individual of how to enroll. What we don't have the staff capacity at this point in time to do, at least in WIC, is to actually go through the enrollment process. We do that through our Family Resource Center, where we have these family resource centers that are funded to help support people. But that long list, gets pushed back a little bit. It creates a roadblock for individuals. But it's something that we're trying to solve for. But it's something to just highlight that if counties even would step up and do, because they do the assessments for Medi-Cal, Medicaid, they do a lot of the assessments for SNAP. And if they were doing that as part of their enrollment process and their enrollment individuals, it would expedite it so much quicker and provide some relief for social services that are trying to keep up.
Yeah, no, and that's actually a great point. Those are efforts we're trying to make actively all the time, which is getting inroads into healthcare groups, into clinics, and what have you. We're doing a very active effort there, as well as the energy programs, as well as you mentioned. I mean, those are both the energy subsidized program as well as Lifeline are both administered by the CPC. think there'd be a lot more confluence of events there where they'd look to combine the two. And I've tried to work with some of the energy guys on just doing mailers. I'm doing combined mailers on the energy program through CARE as well as Lifeline. And even that has been challenging. So it's things like that that just get really frustrating, that there should be a greater cross awareness of here's all the things you qualify for if you participate in these programs. So totally agree.
And so, I mean, it sounds like there's an opportunity for county coordination. And so maybe a supervisor, if you can kind of weigh in on some of those opportunities. Under Lifeline, there's something called categorical eligibility, kind of what they were talking about, that if you're already enrolled in the low-income program, you're enrolled in Lifeline, in essence. So what might be some opportunities to do some of that coordination at the county level?
Well, certainly having the conversations we're having today kind of sparks ideas of what we could be doing better. And certainly as one supervisor out of 5, being able to bring the kind of program and seeing how could our county staff, we have 5,300 employees in the county. We're one of the largest employers in the region, but this is where we could really talk to our Department of Social Services to get more participation. And when we have thousands of residents already coming into our office, I think we're in a prime position to make these additional services known to our community. I also serve on the executive board of the California State Association of Counties. Every local government has their own association, the League of Cities for our California cities. These conversations should be happening where I think a lot more council members and a lot more supervisors would be interested in really trying to draw down. That's one of our, I always said, it's not only our job to make decisions and make policy, but it's also to draw down resources for our residents who need it. And so the more that we could get more of our eligible residents to apply and qualify and obtain these services, then we're doing a good service to our residents. And that has to be an imperative coming from local government. But I think certainly going to our associations, we could try to get more participation and address this issue of not having enough of our residents participate in such a critical program.
Thank you. And a related question, since the California Public Utilities Commission oversees the program, maybe this is for Paulina and Raymond, is what are different ways that community members can get engaged, since the CPUC is judicial, they have proceedings, but any recommendations on how CBOs can get engaged with the PUC?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I think it was Ray who said we need to democratize broadband. I think we need to democratize the CPUC. So, and I think that's critical to the changes we're talking about here. You know, it really is, anytime we're talking about the changes we're talking about now, and, you know, we mentioned that we need the governor's support and we need more legislative support to really move some of these changes. What we need is community organizations, and we need people impacted by the changes that we're trying to seek to be able to tell their stories, to get our stories out to the media. You know, we just celebrated last week the expansion of the tax credit, the California tax credit, to all immigrant workers, including those that file their taxes with I-10. And that was a 3-year effort. And it took community-based organizations. It took both on the immigrant side, on the economic justice side, the racial justice side, and immigrant workers themselves going into the media, going to the hearings, you know, writing letters. And that's the kind of effort it takes if we're gonna really move the CPUC and the governor and the legislator to do what we're talking about here. And so, you know, CRC is ready to do that. I know Ray is, and there's, we're not trying to build something new here. We're trying to really expand a program that works and that should be utilized at the fullest extent possible to benefit the communities that we work with every day. And so that's what I would say we need to do, and what it will take to really see the changes that we're looking for here.
Great, thank you. Quick question from the attendees. Is this program available if you don't have Social Security? I guess it's more for Mr. Johnson.
So I'm either. It's available through any federal program, any assistance federal program, be it Social Security, be it Medicaid, what have you, as well as any state-based program as well.
I think
So,
the question is, if you don't have Social Security, can you still apply?
If you don't have Social Security, if you certainly if on the unemployment issue, the FCC made that change this year, given the pandemic, that anyone filing for unemployment automatically would qualify for Lifeline. But if it's something related to being a non-resident alien and having a situation where you don't have necessary papers, there are allowances within the CPC under having the matricular ID. We know that it's been bandied about within the CPC on getting that final approval. I do believe that's in process, and I can find out more about that as well. So there is the ability to use the matricular ID for the Lifeline program.
And I guess a related question, it says here, thank you for talking about this. Currently, people and students are part of the program have bad connections. Can you talk about kind of what existing lines offer Lifeline?
Yeah, I mean, the Lifeline program, we're offering 4G LTE on every phone that we put out there to any consumer. Any issues with connectivity, again, as Ray brought this up, as well as Luis, on the issues about connectivity in the rural areas and other areas that don't have as good coverage. That is part of the reason we deployed this Wi-Fi technology, was to enable that Wi-Fi offload capability to have alternative network access. There are two issues at hand going on at the same time. One is the need for infrastructure investment. You hear that all the time. You hear that in California. You hear that, frankly, at the federal level as well. That is going to take years to get done, as we all know. A lot of big network guys are already working on trying to make that happen faster, but then they're more focused on their deployment of 5G, to be honest. That's where their focus is. And from that perspective, there's a need for that kind of bridge between utilizing wireless technology, the best available being 4G LTE, and making sure you can get that connectivity, be it 4G LTE or Wi-Fi, into those rural areas. There are also new technology platforms coming out that will perhaps provide for better enablement. We are constantly working on that, on how to revise and improve that connectivity and making sure that people get the best access possible.
Thank you. Let me, quick time check. We have about 10 minutes. Let me ask the panelists if we can maybe start doing some last thoughts, closing comments, whether there be kind of how to improve access, how do we kind of follow up on this. We already had some great ideas from the supervisor and also from Ray, but maybe we'll start off with Ray in terms of some closing comments.
I mean, just for me, I think the only thing is that this is so critically important. We all see the value here. The question that really is going to come up is what priority does this lie in the bounty of needs? And so, I think that it's paramount to it because it is the difference between seeing a doctor in telehealth and keeping yourself safe at home and not being exposed, especially during the time of COVID. So I think it needs to be presented in that. And I think that's something that moving forward needs to be brought up because there are going to be a lot of other needs in our communities. And so it's an important aspect too, to think about what this does for future generations, for the generations that are having less access. They have a less potential to be able to live to their full potential. And so, for us, the cost is just too much to bear to not invest and to not care about this issue. And we hope that we can find local solutions like what we're trying to do at Community Bridges through local hubs. And we need partners and funding to help do that so we can show other partners that it's possible. And we'll keep doing it until we probably get sued by the big ISPs because they don't like us draining up their broadband. But it's legal and it's allowable and it's a cheap solution until we get to the big push and the big ask over the legislator and over the federal government or the CPUC, whoever comes first and however it comes forward.
Great. Thank you so much for your leadership, Ray. Paulina, any closing comments?
I would just say that, change comes through building power, and that we must remember, as the supervisor reminded us, that this is a civil rights issue. and that we're building towards that we're committed towards that, and that democratizing, I'm just going to steal all of your all's lines, that democratizing broadband comes with democratizing the CPUC. And that those are my takeaways from today. How about I say it that way? Those are my takeaways from the panel today, and that you know, that we're in it, you know, going forward, and that it's going to take some time, but let's build that power to make that happen.
Great, thank you, Paulina. Mr. Johnson, what do you want to democratize?
Yes, everything. So yes, totally agree with Paulina. So from that perspective, again, appreciate everyone on this call and then listening to this critical event. I agree with Ray that this is a critical element among all the other issues going on right now in California, that, you know, this one really connects all those issues together, and having a solution where you've got a handheld device that gives you access to all the things you need is really what people should have readily available. And that's both as a protective measure to actually do e-healthcare from home, to be able to do job search, to be able to do an interview, as someone else mentioned on this call, without having service disruption. Those are all things that are critical. Right now, we are effectively in a war with the FCC on the Lifeline program at the federal level. It's, you all know, or most of you know, that the FCC is Republican controlled. They're not a fan of Lifeline at all. They've done everything they can to undermine the program over the last 4 years. It feels almost crazy that we're in the middle of a pandemic trying to provide service at a national level, and I'm doing battle with a regulatory agency that's supposed to be promoting it. Now, I could say the CPC is operating differently, but I will take Paulina's lead on that, and just from that end say that the CPC is not far behind the FCC on those elements of coming out with things like a straw proposal this past week, which all it does is put the burden on the carriers and doesn't provide an unlimited solution. So it's incredibly aggravating when, as much as I've got to, you know, regularly deal with people in DC and pushing and holding them off, at the same time coming back to the state we operate and provide service in more than any other, you know, state in the union. And I'm also doing battle at the same time with the CBC. I'm just trying to get them to address what's needed during a pandemic, during record unemployment, that we've got to get more service out, and it's got to be funded the right way.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Supervisor Alejo, again, amazing leadership, bottom up. Any closing ideas, thoughts, takeaways?
Oh, thank you, and thank you, Assemblymember Rivas, for having us all. We appreciate it. But people watching from home, if they're asking, what can we do as an individual? First of all, I would say, please vote on November 3rd. As was just stated by Mr. Johnson, if you want to see the internet regulated differently, we need to have a change at the federal level, at the FCC. Previous policy positions were reversed in 2017 to not regulate the internet as a utility, just as important as water, electricity, gas. Those protections for consumers were changed. So we need to, if you want to see a change, it's only a few days away. That's something each of us can do, please. Secondly, we know that when I was in Sacramento, if you want to see any action, you have to raise awareness. These town halls, the opinion pieces and editorials. I asked for an informational session on addressing the digital divide, and some of my former colleagues are working on that to hopefully do that within the next 30 weeks. There's other organizations who are calling the governor to call an extraordinary session on the digital divide because it is that important. We know that if we don't raise awareness and put pressure, things will move much more slower. If we start organizing and addressing this issue more statewide, especially now this pandemic when parents and kids are feeling are suffering so much during these times, if we can't do it now, I mean, then shame on all of us. But I'm gonna do my part as a local government official to work with Assemblymember Rivas and others to try to get action going on this and get it done soon, not wait. We waited far too long already, and enough is enough. We have the solutions, we have the technology, we just need the will in California to get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Assemblymember, again, thank you for allowing us to have this discussion focused in your district. If you have any closing thoughts or takeaways.
Yes, Jose, thank you again. Really appreciate the opportunity to have this town hall in our district. Really appreciate the panelists, former Assemblymember and Supervisor Luis Alejo, Ray, Really appreciate the comments by Nathan and Paulina, and everyone is absolutely right. This was a huge problem prior to this pandemic, and we can't forget, prior to all of these issues we're facing now because of COVID-19, our governor in his 2020-2021 budget, he actually included in his budget this Broadband for All initiative. That we had too much of a gap in our state. These are problems that have existed for years, and now they're exacerbated. And Luis is absolutely right. We have got, moving into next year, the work we have moving forward is incredibly important, but we have to do this together. This is one of, not only is this a huge equity issue, but this is a huge public safety issue. We read the stories of our farm workers working in the fields through this pandemic, working, in the fields with these terrible, these wildfires are raging. They're inhaling these toxic, air. And the reason why broadband is such a public safety issue, the reason I mentioned that is because we had introduced a bill this year to expand infrastructure in our most remote areas of this state, expand broadband infrastructure, because a lot of our public safety personnel, they have these staging areas in very remote areas to fight these wildfires, and they're not connected. They don't have the ability to, have access to high-speed internet, which is a huge, huge problem for them. So this is certainly a public safety issue. This is one of our largest equity issues at our, at this time, when you talk about the impact it's having to our disadvantaged communities, to our families, to our students. We've got to do more. Fifth largest economy in the world. We're this is, when you think of California, this is the home of high tech, and we need to do better. And so moving into next year, certainly the will to get something done will be there. But as we've heard, as Luis talked about, our biggest hurdles and challenges is going to be funding. And so certainly we've got to move forward and be creative, thinking about whether it's a statewide bond, something, but we've got to get this issue done, because if we're going to tackle this problem, and we need to do so correctly, we need to do so, by having appropriate funding to truly solve this problem. We can't cut around the edges. We've got to fully invest to solve these problems. So Jose, with that, thank you. Really appreciate the conversation. Appreciate all of the panelists willing to share their thoughts, and look forward to having this, this discussion as we move on.
Perfect. Thank you, Assemblymember. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your last hour with us. This video will be recorded, and it will be on the ID8 Labs website. Lizette will send it out to all the attendees. Enjoy your Monday, enjoy your week, and we look forward to following up.
Thank you, everyone.